We need to at least have an idea of what our beliefs and thoughts are that might not serve us or might not be the best ways of being in the world. Because if we don't, we'll automatically project them onto not only everything we do, which is bad enough, but everything everyone else does as well, which is far worse. I've said it before, but maybe not on this channel. We have to dare to proclaim the ways in which we suck. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to know that, not only about ourselves and maybe others, but the companies we work for and the places that we live in, our communities and homes. If we don't see what's wrong or in need of repair or just that we need to keep an eye on, then we can't hold off the pull into chaos. We won't see it coming until it's too late or much more difficult to change. We need to know our weaknesses the same way we need to know what's wrong with our house and what needs to be done in our communities. But this isn't about painting our homes or town planning. It's about the thoughts and actions you and I have and do every day. I think it's good to start off with a couple examples. And here's good practice for me as well as for you. Even though it's other people's actions that I initially noticed and inspired me to think about this and create this video, it's more useful if I turn it around and think about the ways that I'm an offender. We should always be trying to verify and understand things, including our own observations of others, based on our own lives, because we can see more of the hidden pieces there that we can more easily leave out of the story of others. In the same vein, we can practice being aware of all the excuses and justifications we make for ourselves. Why was something not okay when someone else did it, but justified when we did it? The most general situation I can think of in my own life is when I create a negative feeling in an environment that wasn't there to begin with. This happened a couple weekends ago during Eurovision, and I talked about it in another video. Negative feelings are encoding powerful emotions, but if you don't first consider what the actual emotion is, then you're not giving yourself a chance to decide how it is you feel about it. This sucks is sometimes a well understood statement, but definitely not always. It sounds like a 4-year-old that doesn't want to go to preschool but isn't able to tell you why. Someone with more emotional maturity in the group might ask, what aren't you enjoying here? Or how can we improve it? Or may have completely different expectations for what's happening and enjoy it. I have that this sucks thought in my mind at times when something isn't going great or is frustrating. It's a fair first reaction, but can you take it one or two levels deeper and figure out something more specific that's going on? What expectations do you have that aren't being met or were violated? Knowing that you can change something about your environment or individual state to improve your perceived experience. I was at a dance event last week and went to the course before social dancing to warm up and meet some people to build on dancing with later. I was expecting what I consider the regular course on these drop-in nights, some interesting pattern to get into a flow and maybe try pieces of on the dance floor. Instead, we did what I consider technical training that I felt belonged in longer courses or performance teamwork. It was tricky and required a lot of concentration and skill and execution from both partners. I just wanted to take a moderately challenging class and mess around, feel good, and carry that into the social dancing. And when I didn't get that, I complained to a few of the other dancers. But not everyone felt that way, and it wasn't until much later after social dancing and I left that someone gave me a really good perspective on that class. They knew it was tricky and difficult, but they felt that type of training before social dancing could actually help them relax more, since they had been so focused and disciplined during that time. The social dancing became extra relaxing. I could understand that perspective from other experiences in my life, and I learned a perspective I can use as a tool in the future. I can at least test it. Does focusing super hard on something really challenging allow me to relax more on social dancing afterwards? In one way, the person I was talking to would have never shared that if I hadn't been so persistent in questioning what we were doing. But maybe I could have done without those first level reactions like, this is impossible, or this is way too stressful for a drop-in class. As another example, I'm thinking about a need I feel to be right at times. For sure, it's important to me to figure out what a good way of doing things is. I'm not satisfied with the state of something I think can be significantly improved, even if it works as it is. But that can bleed over to the way I see a situation that can itself be much more complicated than right or wrong. Staying on the dance theme, just a day or so ago, I had a conversation with some friends where they mentioned that a certain dance teacher took their job the most seriously of a number of others in a group. I felt pretty strongly that it wasn't true, but does it matter that I think one teacher is more or less serious than another? If I over-identify with my way of seeing the world, then yes, it does matter. But the problem probably isn't a question of the best dance teacher, but a window into how inflexible my perspective can be at times. And that limits me from asking more valuable questions of others' experiences or just leaving something alone and following the joke. There are plenty of fires that don't need to be stoked in the world. Can you laugh when your identity is threatened? If you can see it as something you choose to adopt among other choices, then possibly you can. But it's less likely you can laugh at something you need to be true in order to make your life work. Other people have reasons for things they do the same as you have reasons for the things you do. No value statement there. But how deeply do you understand the reason for the things you do? That's not that easy to get a clear answer on. If we understood ourselves clearly, we wouldn't have so many questions for psychologists, friends, life coaches, ministers, and Google, or these days, ChatGPT. Understanding the ways in which we suck is a more necessary or even possible tally to take for some than others. We need to have a perspective on our own lives that allows us to have weaknesses without seeing ourselves as weak. We need to understand the ways that we're great too, and spend time thinking about how we'll observe objective progress on our path so we can see ourselves as strong and capable creatures of change. But the truth remains that our ability to get big things done is strongly limited by our weaknesses, so we can't ignore that reality. If you're having so many negative emotions that it feels like your life is shit, then you probably don't need to think about more things that suck, but instead identify specific emotions and feelings present in your life today and break those things down into smaller and smaller pieces that you can figure out some actions for. I'm willing to bet that most people have had the experience of being initially afraid to do something that turned out to be life-changing. I sometimes talk about dance here, pretty often today. It's not because I'm a great dancer, but because most of my first 30 years or so I was too afraid to dance. Something I would also categorize as being a product of having no training or dance role models to pattern. I had a girlfriend at one point that wanted to go salsa dancing with me, and I recognized how terrifying that thought was. The girlfriend left, but not that memory of having something I was too afraid to do. When I pushed through that, I was rewarded with many, many hours of incredible joy. Also, quite a few hours of frustration and letdown. But I couldn't see my life without those experiences now that I've been through them. The greatness of those experiences in my life weren't possible until I approached my weakness head on. There will almost always be a fear of something keeping you getting to your next best self. Can you see those fears? Because then you can deal with them, even if it's tiny piece by tiny piece. Imagine if I had stayed with that woman and let my fear of dancing prevent me from ever enjoying that with her. Far worse, what if that fear mixed with a fear of being alone and gave me incredible anxiety over her participating herself? What if I manifested my fears in her life by making it a requirement of our relationship that she also never dance? Horrible way to live. We have to approach our own fears and weaknesses, if not for our own sake, and to make the lives of those around us better. Whatever our motivation is, we need to constantly be trying to put into action the best that we think we know. As Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Notice the inclusion of the word do mentioned as many times as know in that quote. We need to see the things in our lives, good and bad. We can't do anything about what we can't see. If we know that we're holding an irrational belief, or even just an inconvenient one, then we can be open to at least letting others have their own experiences and maybe even learning from their perspectives. I got lucky enough to do that night social dancing. If we're justifying something we want by proclaiming it's for someone else's benefit, something that happens very frequently in life, not unlike trying to prove we're right to someone under the guise of our beliefs being beneficial to them, when the reality is they're essential to us. Then we stand a chance of seeing ourselves standing outside the situation and evaluating it differently. If we're justifying something we want by claiming it's for someone else's benefit, something that happens very frequently in life, not unlike trying to prove we're right to someone under the guise of our beliefs being beneficial to them, when the reality is they're essential to us, then we stand a chance of seeing ourselves standing outside the situation and evaluating it differently. If you're a parent, teacher, pet owner, and you hear yourself saying, oh, but they don't like da da da, or they can't do da da da, in whatever way those phrases take shape, please give it some additional thought. What are you putting into that situation that someone else might be reacting to? Stephen Covey has a great story at the beginning of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People about how he and his wife saw their son when he was developing as not capable in different contexts. And that it wasn't until they could see this perspective they held and were operating on that they could act differently and that support him in the way he actually needed. But they had to examine their own flaws first, because as parents, teachers, pet owners, bosses, leaders, all of our flaws are of additional importance. We put ourselves in a position to either scale good practices or bad ones. There's a famous quote in sports regarding mistakes that as leaders, we're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. We can't be perfect, of course, but we owe it to others as much as ourselves to examine our own imperfection. A dying man once said, "We're all responsible for the happiness of everyone." And what we project on others is one of the ways that that's true. Don't limit yourself with unnecessary beliefs. Hold opinions less strongly and be more willing to test if they aren't actually false. The things we see as not possible or bad instantly become not possible and bad the moment we hold the belief in earnest. These are the worst self-fulfilling prophecies. Don't limit others with your own limits. You're not doing anyone any favors by denying them the experience, an experience which you might have got wrong. We can at least teach that there may be other possibilities to accomplish something, while still relying on good foundational principles that we don't know about. We can seek the creativity of other minds instead of trying to bind them to what we've already decided. We can teach others about our point of view without teaching it as the point of view. Where we decide on limits we enforce in society, we can still find ways to show and experience the negative consequences we're trying to avoid. So maybe people don't just try to find ways around those limits and others don't support them doing it. We shouldn't make it taboo to talk about and explore negative experiences, weakness, problems, issues, whatever. That won't foster good logic or critical thinking in the student or the teacher. Let's not be a society of constant comfort seekers only caring about seeing the good. Let's dare to see the bad. Let's be that brave. When we see our weaknesses, we can address them. And when we clean up our weaknesses, we more sharply amplify whatever greatness we contain. And if you don't see your own experience as good motivation for change, recognize that you affect everyone around you and do it for the people you care about. The world improves with hard work. We can't forget that. It's not easy. And some of the hardest work is done right here within ourselves. Let's not settle for a world that's not as great as the people we love deserve, which hopefully includes yourself. Hope you have a great day today.